Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, good to see you. I want to talk about crypto. Last week, the Biden administration released their annual Council of Economic Advisors report, which had a large section dedicated to crypto. And the report repeatedly bashed the promise of crypto and largely viewed it through the lens of frauds like Sam Bankman-Fried of FTX. It also ran counter to the executive order from the White House last year on crypto and some previous statements that you've made on the technology. In your view, why has the tone shifted in the administration on crypto to nearly writing the industry off as a scam? And do you believe there remains potential and actual utility? And if so, why do you think your colleagues over at the SEC or CEA say otherwise?
Thanks, Congressman. Unfortunately, I can't speak for the drafting of that document or why it was written the way it was, but certainly, as I've said before, and you alluded to this, I very much focus on the market's perspective and what my responsibility of overseeing markets as chair of the CFTC is. And what we've seen over the past better part of a decade is an emerging market that has commodity digital tokens being traded by retail participants in a speculative manner, and that calls for, I think, clear oversight and regulation. So from my perspective, it's about protecting customers, protecting market stability and resilience, and regardless of what may or may not happen in terms of technology and how it's utilized in our economy or commerce, I think is outside of my purview per se, just because I'm really focused on markets and customer protections and market resiliency.
Well, in the past, you've said that the U.S. should have a clear framework to regulate crypto to promote innovation while also protecting consumers, and that's a view I share. Now, since you last testified, a report revealed the U.S. has already lost its lead for blockchain development, going from 40% to just 29% of the market. And this innovation flight is concerning, and we can't just sit idly by and let other countries or potential adversaries lead in what many refer to as the next version of the internet. How do you view that, and do you think we can change course? And is innovation flight a concern for you and other regulatory counterparts in the administration?
Yeah, I mean, speaking for myself, it should be absolutely a concern, and I do balance that against who are we competing against, right? And I think when I had this conversation years ago with some of your colleagues, maybe some smaller jurisdictions that were trying to get a few steps ahead and to create economic development or a new workforce, that's fine. But what we are seeing is Western economies, Europe has put in place a pretty comprehensive regime that's going to be implemented over the next couple of years. And I think it's important that we as a country, both from a economic perspective, from a labor perspective, from a technology perspective, and national security perspective, that we move the ball forward, right? We don't want to rush. We want to be cautious and deliberate in what we do and how we do it. But creating rules of the road will certainly protect customers, but it will also open up an avenue to identify whether or not there is promise to this innovation and technology.
Now, just getting a little more specific, yesterday in an enforcement action against Binance, your agency once again highlighted that the CFTC believes Ethereum is a commodity. However, the Biden administration's SEC has been saying that Ethereum is a security that not only counters your agency's view, but also the previous SEC leadership's view. I've heard from crypto companies that regulatory clarity is needed to create a robust regulatory framework, but it seems like the relative agencies are at odds not only on Ethereum, but crypto regulation as a whole. Can you talk about the SEC's position on Ethereum in particular being counter to yours, and how do we bridge the gap to make sure the U.S. has comprehensive and clear regulation for crypto to ensure innovation thrives while also protecting consumers?
Thanks, Congressman. I'll focus on the fact that we've had listed futures on a CFTC-regulated markets going back to 2017. First Bitcoin, but then Ethereum a few years later. And since then, the contracts have traded well. They've been under CFTC oversight. And just by virtue of these contracts being listed on CFTC exchanges, in my view, and I've said this many times, I believe they're a commodity. And because they are listed on CFTC exchanges, we do have a regulatory relationship, obviously with the derivatives market and that product, but the underlying market as well, which is why we're bringing cases, including the ones you mentioned with Binance yesterday, against institutions or organizations that are trading Bitcoin or Ethereum.
Well, I do think that legislation to address the issue should place regulatory authority with the CFTC. I think you'll see broad and deep support for that method of regulation, and I urge my support for that as well. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.